Why is psychological safety so critical in medicine? Today we will talk about the science of team performance. Hi, I am Monika Hutnik and I help leaders learn how to lead their international and virtual teams. Together with my team at ETA Go Global, we make the change happen by means of training, coaching, facilitation, mastermind, action learning, and any other ways. And this podcast, A Step Ahead, has been created for all who want to grow in such an international remote environment, who want to grow as leaders, as HR, as change agents, and simply as humans. I'm inviting you here for discoveries and insights. All recordings and materials are available at www.astepahead.com. When we think of psychological safety, we might be confused what it really means in practice. This is why I'm so happy to talk to my guest today, who will be sharing plenty of examples on what it really means in the most intense practice in a medical sector. Alexandre Messager, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me, Monica. I look forward for this session, for this podcast with you today, and to be able to share with the listeners why psychological safety is not nice to have, but a must-have in healthcare, and where it can actually be the difference and literally between life and death. So I look forward for the time we will have together to deep dive into this topic with you and the listeners.
As soon as you mentioned that, I really have shivers down my spine. It's really so direct and so serious. Yes, there is no joking here about psychological safety. But can you tell us first about yourself a little bit? What do you do? What brought you into this area?
Yeah, I have quite an eclectic experience and path through my life. So my background originally is from the hotel industry. So I study and work in the hotel industry for about close to like 8 years. This allowed me to work in several countries. So I had the opportunity to work in England, in Switzerland, in France. Was in Germany, in Austria, in Turkey, as well as Canada and the United Arab Emirates. So I've been able to experience different type of cultures, different type of team settings, and working in usually high luxury hotel companies. So I could definitely see from very early that you might have the best resources, you might have the best hotel product, but what's going to matter at the end is, do the people that work in the hotel provide great service? And it's all about the people, and it's all about the people feel and the tools we provide them. So I really realized that I don't need necessarily to work in the hotel industry. What really I was passionate about was working with teams. And so after that, I joined IKEA in the retail industry. After that, I worked in the leisure industry with a golf organization, and for the past 14 years now, I've worked in the healthcare industry. I used to work for the University of Ottawa in Canada at the Faculty of Medicine, which was a great introduction to what it means to work in healthcare. And suddenly, it was no longer about whether we want to make sales; it was really about patient safety, patient care. And I started to read some article around psychological safety and what is psychological safety, because I didn't really know too much about it. And I quickly realized that this is one of the pillars of making or breaking teams, and whether it's healthcare teams or any teams. And so I decided that for me, what's the most important is that I could have an impact in improving not only how team works, but also patient care and patient safety, and decide to really concentrate on helping, at the end of the day, healthcare teams to be more cohesiveness, to be more performing teams, because I realized that there's no teams in healthcare. And I know that sometimes people can be quite shocked when I say that, but even though there's low turnover in healthcare, most people are staying. It's not teams because actually it's just people working next to each other. It's not necessarily people that know about each other. I often like to say that what is the definition of a team? A team is at the end people that respect, trust, and care about each other. And if you don't invest time in strategically building a team, developing a team and maintaining a team, how do you expect people to become a team? Because often
having the same goal is not enough, no?
Well, it's not enough because when you, in a lot of organizations, it's not just in healthcare, but also like when I work in retail, when I work in the hospitality industry, we rarely take any time to have a strategic plan on how to build a team. We talk about strategic plan for operations, but when it comes to a team, what do most organizations do? Maybe once or twice a year, they do a team building activities and they organize lunches. So it's not how you build a team. It's not just because you're going to have once or twice a team building activity or like free food. That's how you're going to make people trust each other, care about each other, and respect each other. So that's why I came into with my experience, with my learning, I want to have a better impact, and that's why my work revolve around the three pillars that make or break any team, which are psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and motivation. And really seeing that out of those three pillars, the one that is the Achilles heel in healthcare is psychological safety, and that's where we can delve more into today.
Fantastic. When the popular image, the popular fantasy about healthcare is that when you go to a doctor's, you want to feel safe. Yes, you want to be treated accordingly. Now, when we combine this with the notion of psychological safety that might be worth investing in the medical sector, we might come across a surprise. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, what we tend to see is that I think when you go see your doctor, hopefully, you can feel safe that you can express how you feel, your symptoms, and I think that most clinicians, doctors are doing a great job at that, and they're able to tell you what's going on. What we see though is that within the teams, behind the scene, what you don't see, whether it's going to be in hospitals or whether it's going to be at your family health clinic, there's a big hierarchy that happens in healthcare. And everybody is supposed to follow the hierarchy. And because the hierarchy is so heavy, people are really hesitating to speak up. And why? And the main thing that I've learned and that I'm seeing over and over again as I work with clinical team, not just here in North America, but also in Europe and in the Middle East, is that mistakes, which we are all human beings, so even our doctors are going to make mistakes, like we're not bulletproof. Mistakes are being seen as a sign of weakness, as a sign of failure. Even though we can tell them, well, no, it's okay. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. The most important thing is that when we make mistakes, we learn from it and we share it with others so the other people don't have to experience it and repeat those mistakes, especially if it's going to be on a patient. So what we have seen is that there are still, as soon as there's mistakes or when people see an errors, there's this unwillingness to share it because they're going to feel, how will I be seen by my peers? How will I be seen by other people? And therefore, they want to hide it. They want to hide it because they're afraid of their reputation. They're afraid of how they're going to be seen maybe now as weak by their peers. And this is not acceptable because ultimately, who is going to suffer is going to be the patients. Patient safety, patient care. And that's why it's the Achilles heel, psychological safety, because what is psychological safety? And I think it's important. Psychological safety basically is the notion that you can speak up without the fear of being reprimanded, without the fear of being made fun of, or that if you speak up, there's going to be consequences. And all this has been developed by Dr. Amy Edmondson and all the work that she has been doing since the 90s. And she really started her work in healthcare as well. So it's not something that cannot be applied to healthcare. It is 100% applicable to healthcare. And so it's the Achilles heel, because the culture in healthcare is not a culture of displaying our errors. It's not a culture of showing we can make mistakes, because all those doctors and clinicians, they were raised by telling them you need to be perfect, you need to be the best of the best, and they needed to be the best of the best to enter medical school. They needed to be the best of the best to graduate from medical school. And yes, when they make a mistake, it has much more impact than if you and I make a mistake, because for them, it can be life and death. And so with all this pressure, it means that if I show and if I tell people I make a mistake, which is the base of psychological safety and learning from it and being able to move forward, well, they hide it. And the cost is that it's the patient safety, patient care that directly will be affected, but also the well-being within the clinical teams, where people that are working feel like even more stressed because they know already they cannot make mistakes. And if they make mistake, then I should hide it because I don't want people to know it. So it's added pressure, mental pressure, and this is not good. And in my work, what we do is we measure those psychological safety within teams, and we follow and work with teams over a period of anywhere from 6 to 18 months with the goal of changing, updating the culture so it's more comfortable to talk about mistakes, it's more comfortable to learn from each other, and ultimately we can improve our work environment and we can improve patient care and patient safety. And what was always remarkable in the work of Dr. Amy Edmondson is that she showed that the highest performing team were the one that display the most amount of errors, which can be like weird, when you think about it. But it's not that they make more mistakes, it's that actually they feel more comfortable sharing mistakes. And that's the basis of the work, and that's the basis of trying to change the culture, a culture that doesn't see mistakes as a learning opportunity, but sees mistakes as a sign of failure.
I would even build on it. You are referring to failures, to mistakes. My observations of the medical sector is that it's not even okay to admit your weakness. Yes, it's not even okay to admit that you are tired.
You're supposed to be Superman, Superwoman,
always available, always focused on patient, always in your top performance. And this is the expectation of a patient as we come as patients to the medical sector. But I would fully agree. It's unrealistic, and being open about that would bring so much more profit, so much more benefit to all of us. So I'm very curious about your work. It seems to be almost like a taboo to be mentioning a weakness or a mistake even in a medical sector, in a medical team. How do you touch that? How do you, make it visible?
It's very difficult. So what I refer before, like these 3 pillars, and those 3 pillars were identified by the work of ICQ Global and Shabbatov through the fact that those 3 pillars are psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and intrinsic motivation. And when you talk about this, a lot of people say, I understand what it is, or tell me more about it. But for most people, it is very abstract, So, and when you work in an industry such as healthcare, people will listen to you only if they can see things, if they can visualize, because healthcare, it's all about data-driven. It's all about research.
Yes.
It's about things that are concrete. So early on in my career, when we couldn't necessarily measure those things, it was very hard to break into, because people say, I understand. And when you say, well, let's talk about that, a lot of leaders will say, no, my department is very safe psychologically. We're very cognitively diverse. Everybody's motivated. And when I say, well, prove it, They say, well, this is what I've seen, but I could not challenge them because we could not measure it. And thanks to the work of ICQ Global and other organization and other questionnaires that are there, we are able to measure it now. And so now when I go see medical leaders and I say, okay, listen, tell me more about your psychological safety and cognitive diversity and motivation. And they say, yeah, it's all good. So now I can really tell them, okay, now prove it. And they say, well, what do you mean prove it? Well, I'll say you work in an environment where everything is about data, everything is measurable, everything is research. How can you tell me that your team is psychologically safe? And then they're looking at me and say, well, that's my feeling. I say, well, how come do you go on feelings when usually when you do things, everything is measured? So I tell them now we can actually measure it. And that's what I explain to them the process. And suddenly when I explain them the process, a lot of them are actually afraid. A lot of them say, well, I prefer not to know. And
What's
why?
the fear? What's the fear?
The fear is that you have to understand that, again, it's this notion of the culture they are in. It's a culture where any sign of weakness or every sign of data that is not good is going to point at them that they are.
It will disclose our weakness. Yes,
it will disclose the weakness
that we are not perfect.
Exactly, things are not perfect, and so a lot of them say, "No, I prefer to not know," or like, "Oh, I'm going to retire in 3 months, so I don't in 3 years. I'm going to retire in 3 years, or in 5 years. I prefer to not rock the boat." And so, what has been very interesting is that so far the healthcare leaders, whether it was here in North America, in Europe, or in the Middle East, the healthcare leaders that were open to start and work on this 6 to 18 months project, where 95% of them were visible minority leaders.
Wow.
So whether they were women, or whether they were issued from other visible ethnicity, they were the ones that were much more receptive to try and be willing to get measured on those three pillars. I don't have enough data yet and research to back this up. What I can only say from my instinct is that because visible minority were already exposed and understand how important psychological safety is, not just in their work, but also in their day-to-day life, that they have much more appreciation for it. Therefore, they are more open to take a leap of faith because they understand how crucial this is. And so what I do is that when I start to talk with those leaders, we look at the department, and often what we do is that on month 0, so we will measure their team's psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and motivation. And we will talk to the leader of the department and we'll say, okay, what are other key performance indicators that are important for you in your department? So such as other patient metrics. And every 3 months, we remeasure our 3 invisible forces, psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and motivation, along with the patient metrics they give us. And every 3 months, we can see the progress we're making through giving them either workshops or either exercise to do, individual exercise to do as a member, or also team exercise to do through their day that are more operationally driven. And we measure this, and whether over 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months, we can see progress that is being made. And at the end, the goal is to publish research papers. So the more we will publish research papers, the more we can have, I call it ammunition, to be able to show to other clinical leaders that feels wary or feel not safe yet, how we can actually improve things. And so creating this comfort zone for them to take this leap of faith. So it's like anything, like once we change and when we can point out data, it's a little bit scary, but at the same time, it allows us to have a more concrete discussion. And ultimately, I think a lot of people, when they say, well, no, I prefer to not know and so on, I say, well, your car might crash. I give you the opportunity to steer it away from the crash. Don't you want to know? And so that's why, it's hard for them to say no. And I tell them, it doesn't really matter what your initial numbers are. This will be our starting point. Whether they're terrible or not, who cares? What's going to be important is that how we are improving them with time. And it's still it's a hard battle, but more and more people now are open to it. They see the impact of it. You have to understand, like healthcare is it's much more of a reactive industry, a reactive culture. It's because it's very hierarchical. It takes a lot of time to change things. So you have to just to understand, like when you try to change culture and so on, take 5, 10, 15 years. Can be depressing, but you just need to think, you are in an ultra marathon. You are not a 100-meter dash.
Keep on doing your job.
You keep on doing, you work with those people that will be what we call the early adopters, when we talk about change management. And we start to gain momentum. And the goal really is to create this awareness. The tool is there. We can make progress. We can help you. And ultimately can help your work environment. And it can help patient care and patient safety. Again, it's not about pointing the fingers at anyone. It's about, okay, how can we improve? How can we actually start to build teams? Because we never build teams. And I often tell like a clinician, you were pit against each other very early on to be the best against the best. In medical school, you competed to go into medical school. You competed to graduate. You competed to go in your specialty that you wanted to. And when you finish all your education, well, we throw you in the mix. We throw you there. And we say, okay, like it's kind of a sink and swim approach. And so I say, you never really were taught how to work as a team. So it's no wonder that dysfunction feels comfortable, because that's what you were always exposed to.
You've really worked with many teams and for many years already. Can you tell us about some of the improvements that the teams were able to achieve?
Yeah, so what we have seen is that, I like to say there's two types of teams. Sometimes people will say, okay, well, we're just going to work on us clinicians, so all the doctors together. And others will say, well, let's work with the entire team we're working with, which are what I call multidisciplinary team, which will be the doctor with the administrative person, with the nurses, with the other health allies like physiotherapists and so on. So there's definitely like different, it will be much more easy to work with just with a clinicians group, because it's the same mix, is the same type of people. When it's multidisciplinary team, there it takes more time to work and move the needle. But this is much more like the reality, like you are not, when you go anywhere, you don't just deal with one doctor, you deal with multidisciplinary teams. So what we have seen so far, and it's regardless of whether it's multidisciplinary team or just like one type of team, and that's what I always say to the team, is that the first 3 months is going to be complete chaos. Because the first 3 months, what we do is we are opening the can of worm, and we are basically putting everything out there. So the first 3 months, there's a lot of conflict. Why? Because and I say to everyone, before we all start this project, you have to understand the first 3 months is going to be a lot of conflict, because we need to put everything on the table. We need to say exactly how we feel, what has been unsaid for so many months and years, because that's the only way we can start fresh. So there's a lot of challenges the first 3 months, because people are not necessarily feel comfortable, and then some people are speaking louder than others and so on. But it's all part of creating this team. Is first you need, like, it's not smooth sailing. So we can see the first 3 months is like productivity goes a little bit down as well. Like people, there's more tense, but the magic happened usually around month 3, 4, when now we have put everything there. Now we have also learned a common language about why we do what we do, why we speak the way we speak, and so on. That's part of how we process information, what I call cognitive diversity. And now that we have this common language and we speak that, now we're able to move forward. So even within the teams and within the project, within teams, we have different teams. like any change management, we will have an early adopter team. So basically, like I like to say, is when we take a team, there's the kind of, within the big team, there's going to be pilot teams, and not the team is not moving at the same speed. Everybody's not moving at the same speed. So we work with those teams that are more the early adopters, more eager to work, and we work with them, and slowly we touch. So that's why I like to say that anyone that goes to see an organization and tell them, okay, well, we're going to do some team exercise so you can improve your team. Your team can be much more high performing, and we're going to do this like in the span of one workshop or two workshop. I'm sorry to say, but I have a hard time believing in that, because you cannot change a culture. You cannot change a team like in the span of one or two workshops. Because if you're like me, we all attended some workshops, and sometimes we feel like so energized by the workshop. The workshop has been great. We have all those ideas. But then like 2 or 3, 1 or 2 weeks later, we forgot about all this, because we are back in our day to day and the operation and putting out all those fires and so on. So that's why, the program is designed to be 6 to 18 months, because it's a long-term process. We have to first undo everything that has been the bad habits, undo a culture that's a culture of not speaking up, a culture as well where some people are joining the team, they already have PTSD about other experience they had in the past. It's people, when people work with others, they will see you. They will not see you for who you are as a human. They will see you for what is your title first.
Yes.
And based on your title, they will say, well, either I can have a close relationship or not with this person, because it's based on other people in my past experience that have the same title, where they're nice or where they're not nice, or where they like how were they, And until you decide to open up and explain who you are, why is Monica different than Samantha, and so on, only then people will start to understand who you are and decide, okay, maybe the labels I put on you at first were not the right one, because now I better understand who you are. And this takes time. It's like building teams takes time. And that's why I say it needs to be strategically think about how do you create a team? How do you maintain a team? How do you develop your team? It cannot just be like, oh, let's just throw things on the wall and let's see what sticks. That's not how it works. But often that's what it is. Like we say, oh, let's see. Oh, it's gonna be the end of the fiscal year. We have a little bit of money left, and let's do a training for the team. Let's build like team building. It's what are you gonna do to make everything sustainable? Is it aligned with what your team requires now?
Is there a specific aspect that most teams struggle with? We've been relating to different aspects of psychological safety or cognitive diversity or motivation. Is there a pattern that repeats?
I mean, really where we saw is that out of those 3 pillars, like I was mentioning, psychological safety, the pattern is often that the perception of the leaders is often the leaders feel way more psychologically safe than the employee, which is kind of normal, but we can see that the pattern is about 20 points. So there's a big gap in how leaders see their reality versus how the employee or the N-1 person see their reality. So we talk about 20 points, which is a huge gap. And we can also see that in terms of cognitive diversity, teams are actually cognitively diverse. So cognitively diverse means that do we have within our team people that think very differently from one another? And we see that usually the percentage of cognitive diversity within teams is around 30 to 40%. So it still leaves a big blind spot of about 70%. And so because consciously or unconsciously, you will attract people that think like you because it's much more easier to work with them. I mean, we cannot blame each other. We are human beings and we like things that are more certain, and so things are more certain when you work with people that feel like you or think like you, So I would say the pattern is definitely it's hard at the beginning because everybody looks at you. Okay, who's this guy that's coming externally and like You talk about psychological safety, like
They need to put you in hierarchy first, probably. No?
Well, and can I really like talk about it and so on? So that's why we share really concrete case with people. So the more case we have now, the easier it is for them to relate, because they are seeing we are not just talking about theory, and also we are being very transparent in showing the entire team all the preliminary result, what we are trying to do, telling them things that is very surprising for them. When I say to them, what, for the next 3 months is going to be very chaotic. There's going to be a lot of conflict, and it's going to be difficult. And people are like, aren't you supposed to say the opposite? I say, no, I'm going to tell you, because that's the work we are doing. We need to undo things. We need to put things on the table. So not everybody will, of course, will speak at the same time right now. Some people will have no problem speaking up about the conflict right away. Some people it will be more in 3 months from now, But so I think that it's always this wait and see, and that's why it's so important and crucial that actually it needs to come from the leaders, and the leaders need to play a big role. Is like they need to be the one displaying this pattern of being psychologically safe, showing sign of vulnerability, and so on. So as much as healthcare leaders will choose my services, I also vet them. Because if I feel that the leader is not ready, I tell them, if I feel that the leader is not ready to be the one that's going to lead this program and walk the talk first and do all this, I tell them, listen, it's not going to work. Because if the leaders who just still want to continue a top down and expect everybody to do it except them, it cannot work. And I learned it the hard way, at the beginning, is that so there was one leader so we know that we already knew that the department was not working well. We knew the department was very struggling. The work environment was very heavy. People were not happy. A lot of challenges. We know that the challenges were due in part because of the leaders, but also other members. It was not just due to one person. And so I spoke to the leader, and I say, I explain everything. I say, we will need to be transparent. We'll need to show all the entire team those preliminary results. We will need to talk about what's going to go. And so I explain, there's going to be a lot of conflict. You need to feel comfortable. We cannot not share. We cannot not be transparent, because transparency is the base of this program that we deliver. And the leader said, yeah, no problem. I'm ready. I know things are not good, and we need to change things, and so on. And it's a department that I've worked before, was able to measure psychological safety and so on. So I knew already that there was what challenges existed. And so we started to do the measurement. We got all the numbers. And so before showing it to the team, I show it to the leader. The leader look at the result and say, I'm not sharing this with the teams. And I say, what do you mean you're not sharing the result with the team? This is the base. We talk about that. You say, yeah, but I don't like those results. And I know those results are a little bit biased, because I know there's those 2 or 3 employees that didn't like me. So that's what they do. And that's what I say, but I explained to you. And she said, no, I'm not doing it. And so we had to shut down the exercise, the program, because you cannot move forward if you're not publishing the results. And what happened is that we knew that 6 months down the road, the department imploded, and half of the clinician left to other hospitals, and he went nowhere.
So you are already mentioning some key success factors for such an evolution and transformation of a team. One of them is really the position of a leader and the behavior of a leader, being the role model, or at least trying to model the the behaviors, what might be or what are some of the other success factors for a team to develop performance, to develop the psychological safety, and to grow on other dimensions?
Well, I think that the main thing in healthcare is really to, like I say, it's to change this culture within a team of mistakes being a failure. This is the growing one. So anything that can be done to start to change this culture is going to be seen as a sign of as a success. So it's really about starting first to have much more celebrating mistakes. So we have those sessions where once a week or once a month we display all the mistakes that have been made, and but more importantly, okay, this is where the mistakes. How can we make sure that it doesn't happen again? How do we fix it? So we start to talk about it. That's the first thing. We also make sure that when people display mistakes, what is the reaction of people around the table, and the leader needs to control that. People laughing or people giving sigh or people giving the eyes, whether it's like verbal or body language. We are also working on making people aware of that. So those are the first thing, and showing that, developing that, often to create also this environment that it's okay to speak up. What has been working well is to use when teams have meetings, they use the red teaming approach. So basically that every time there's a meeting, the team is split into two groups. One group will be the red team, the other one, we can call it the blue team. But basically the idea is that when the blue team is bringing forward ideas of how to improve things, the goal of the red team, whether they like the idea or not, it doesn't matter. The goal of the red team is to show all the flaws that the blue team has in the ideas, and to show the flaws to build a stronger solution. So again, the goal is to show that we want you to actually think differently. We want you to challenge one another, not from the fact of hurting your ego, but from the fact that only by challenging each other can we build an even more bulletproof solution. And those are crucial and so important when we deal with patient care and patient safety. And that's really the goal. So they are doing this to start to improve. And the more we have been doing this within team, the more now they are accustomed and the more they feel comfortable challenging one another, because it's part of it. They are no longer seen as an attack, but they are seen as a sign of improvement. And sometimes the people on the red team, it's very hard for them to, sometimes they completely agree with the ideas of the blue team. And we know that. Why? Because we saw that cognitively, they're all very similar. So also the role is that when you're on the red team, and if you feel there's no flaws in the idea presented, we also push them to find flaws, because it's also an opportunity for them to think outside of their own box and to grow into a different way of thinking. So those has been working very well. Also, we show them early on when we do that. We show them that when they have team meetings and when we want their opinion, we ask them to write it on a piece of paper. So therefore, people are not being biased and not being influenced by others, and we can have much more. And it's always being seen that if you ask a group of people to write down on a piece of paper their idea, there will always be much more different ideas than if you had asked the group verbally to answer. Because sometimes the first two people will say right, you wanted to say left, but now you don't know if you're going to say right, you're going to say left, because you don't want to be against what so far the majority is going, and so on. So we were losing things. And so suddenly that's how it starts to create more psychological safety within teams, that I can have my opinion and so on. And so it's not going to be something that's overnight. For some teams, for some people, again, it's like any change, you will have early adopters, you will have people that the wait and see, and then you have your resistors. So people will move at different speed. And but what we tend to see, most of the time we are able to see Usually after 6 months, we have we start to see a good movement. And after a year, Because often what we see, and something that's important when we do those assessment, we see that if you just look at the average, the average is quite good. But often what we see is that within the team, there's two teams that will live different realities. One team that can feels very safe, and the other team that can feel not safe at all. But the average looks good, but you see that within your team, there can be 2, 3, or 4 different silos that lives complete different lives and perception of what's going on. So it's also very interesting to see and address those points.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that some groups or some people are more willing or more quick to follow or more quick to understand the benefit and are more willing to get involved in these programs. We can call them early adopters. Who are they?
We cannot just necessarily put a label on them.
No.
As you know, but definitely so far what we have seen, and because we are not just measuring psychological safety, but we're also measuring cognitive diversity. Cognitive diversity is also one of those assessment and tools that were developed by this company that we mentioned, ICQ Global. And with the cognitive diversity and the work we have been doing with in healthcare, we're actually able to see, based on clinical specialties, what tend to be your way of thinking. So we know, for instance, that surgeons and emergency doctors share the similar thinking pattern that will be, for instance, at the opposite thinking pattern of where most health allies or nurses will tend to fall. So we can already start to see and better, and we knew there was always like conflict between nurses and surgeons. Everybody knows it's kind of something that's known in healthcare. But now we see it validated, and now we can also explain why people are thinking differently and how to close this gap. So
yes,
It's the same thing. We can see also that if you work in a children's hospital, if you're a pediatrician and you work in a children's hospital, you have a very different way of thinking than if you are also a doctor, but that works in a regular hospital. So different thinking pattern that will attract you to work there. So when you ask me, like, could we see, like, who are your early adopters and so on? Often, we would see that people that tend to fall in the emergency or surgeon type of thinking will have a tendency to be much more willing to try, because naturally their way of thinking is much more short-term orientation, risk takers. So they are willing to try those things. Whereas sometimes, again, but not, I don't want to, again, it's not about putting people in boxes, but at the opposite, where you have much more about clinical researchers and so on, will be much more, okay, let's wait and see, because they want to see more data. They want to see more. So they are more, they are less, some of them could be less risk adverse.
Much more analysis before really taking a decision. So, in fact, a different style.
That's why sometimes you know that if you concentrate, that's why, for instance, when I concentrate right now to gain this momentum and to be able to like work more onto, the goal is to publish more research papers. I know I will have a tendency, it will be a little bit easier if I start to concentrate to work much more now with emergency department than it will be if I was to try and work with a psychiatric department, for instance. Okay, again, there's always exceptions, but I know that the way of thinking of the emergency department will be allowed that we can go and faster we can go and try this. That's just a way of also using our insight to be able to gain momentum. And so it's a whole approach there.
I really like it. It builds a big, complete picture together, a complex picture, yes, where different parts complete each other. Now, Alexandre, we've been really focusing on the medical sector, and I think what's striking is how the performance of a team really translates into life and health of a patient. So I think there is no other sector that would be so striking as this one. But we definitely can also learn from the experiences from this sector, also for other sectors. So if you were to give, let's say, a generalized advice of how to start, what to look at, if, let's say, somebody who is running a team, who is running a department, or who is a member of a team or a member of a department considers, yes, we could work on it, what would you, suggest as the first step possibly?
I think ultimately, those three pillars, like we were saying, psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and intrinsic motivation, they are what we call the three forces. Again, that was referred by Shabatoth in his book, Uncommon Sense. So the three forces, like, make or break any teams. And that's what I say often when I give talks. It doesn't matter whether it's a healthcare team, whether it's an administrative team, whether it's a sports team. It applies to any teams, and even your own circle of friends, you can say it's a team. And so I think the first thing, and applicable to any industry, anyone that works in a team, is, and that's the thing that's lacking, that I've been mentioning already over and over, is that what is first your strategic plan to build, maintain, and enhance your team. So what do you want your team to look like? I think the first thing is define what it means to be a team, defines how you want your team to perform, and then what concrete action you're going to do to make this happen and to sustain and to maintain it. So spending as much time as you would spend into developing a strategic operational plan, which we know take months and months and months, well, the same thing is to go with actually the most important, I don't like to call it resources, but the most important element in your organization, which are your people. Like I said at the beginning, I work in some of the most luxurious hotels in the world. You can have golden faucets and you can have the best equipment in the hotel and everything you want. If the service is crap, and your experience will be bad. Even though it was the most beautiful hotel, but the service is bad. So again, it's the same thing with the team. If you want your organization is only as strong as your team. So first of all, what is your strategic plan to build a team? How will you know you crossed the finish line to achieve it? So basically, what are your measurements? How do you measure that you are there? And the more data, the more concrete things you can do to measure. And therefore, that's why I will definitely say, you need to measure psychological safety. You need to measure cognitive diversity. You need to measure motivation. And I say often, and I think it's okay now because more and more organizations are talking about engagement, motivation. But if out there's still organizations that talk about satisfaction, I couldn't care less whether a team is satisfied or not. For me, satisfaction is completely useless. Satisfaction is basically you are on your couch at home watching TV. It's very comfortable, but nothing is happening. And worse, you can start gaining weight because you're going to eat popcorn while you watch TV. So that's satisfaction. For me, motivation or engagement is that not only you're satisfied, but you have this drive of wanting to do something, wanting to achieve something more, and a continuous drive. So I think this is what's important. So what is your strategic plan? Where do you want to go? How are you going to measure it? I think those are the three main important blocks that anyone in any type of industry that's working with a team needs to do.
I couldn't agree more that what the team does is just as important as how the team does it. And just as you mentioned, the golden faucets in luxurious hotels, that would be the what. It doesn't come across if you don't have the how. So fortunately, the science about leadership and management has not only discovered that, but also has developed enough proof and measurement potential, yes, measurement possibilities. Alexandre, it was fascinating to talk today. I would have many more questions. Maybe we can catch up another day. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Monica. It was a pleasure. And if any of your listeners want more information, they can find all my information and contact me directly via LinkedIn. It's always a pleasure to be able to share any resources and any research that I've conducted so far. I think the more we can share with one another, the better it is as human being, and especially we can grow and make, especially in healthcare, a world safer for everyone. So thank you.
I will also put your contact information on the episode landing page I will be mentioning in our outro. Thanks so much, Alexandre.
Thank you.
It has been a powerful reminder that in healthcare, building high-performing teams isn't just a management goal. It is quite literally a matter of life and death. And as we've learned today, moving from intuition to data is the only way to bridge that 20-point gap between how safe a leader feels and how safe the team actually is. And remember, building a team is a strategic marathon, not a one-off event, and it requires focusing on the 3 essential pillars: psychological safety, cognitive diversity, and motivation. If you'd like to connect with my guest, Alexandre Messager, to learn more about his work in clinical settings or the research paper he is developing, you can find his contact information in the show notes at astepahead.pro/023. That's the number of the episode number 23. And to our listeners, if you want to stay a step ahead in leading change, in developing your global leadership skills, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at astepahead.pro. You will receive regular updates on new episodes, on articles across our key cycles, including leading change across cultures and consultant tools. There are also some other episodes which I would love to recommend to you. For example, this one on managing stakeholders in Asia, a great conversation with Beata Malinowska, who has spent a number of years managing the company operations in a bunch of Asian countries, where building mutual trust and keeping the psychological safety was one of the enablers that Beata was able to tap into. A fascinating, very practical conversation. astepahead.pro017, episode number 17. How to build psychological safety in a team? Certainly some micro affirmations could be helpful. So what are these micro affirmations and why you want to have them in your team? This is a conversation with Ben Capel, astepahead.pro/004. And if you are a Polish speaker and would like to tap into my Polish content, serdecznie zapraszam do podcastu okrokdoprzódu.pl. Dzisiaj była mowa o mindsetie maratończyka. Jest tam taki bardzo fajny odcinek, gdzie rozmawiam o tym, że japoński biznes to jest biznes, który się robi z mindsetem maratończyka, a moim gościem jest Hiroki Nukui. Znajdziecie tę rozmowę na okrokdoprzódu.pl/113. Okay, don't forget to follow myself, Monika Czatnik, on LinkedIn for more insights into intercultural cooperation and virtual leadership. And thank you for listening. We will see you in the next episode, always one step ahead.